Brauchler. The last name is Brauchler. I'm the district attorney for the 18th Judicial District. That encompasses Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. I have about 88% of Aurora in my jurisdiction by population, and that includes the area that we're going to talk about here today. Back on July the 25th of this year, there was a protest that took place outside of the Aurora Municipal Center. Subsequent to that protest, those protesters spilled out onto northbound and southbound I-225. There was an incident, a couple different incidents. One involving the actions of a Jeep driver as it approached and ultimately drove through the area that had been occupied by protesters. That's what we're here to discuss today. As you know, there was another case that we had previously filed against someone we have accused of attempted murder of the Jeep owner and driver and the passenger for shooting. I'll make passing reference to that in a discussion of the investigation of this, but I don't intend to talk any more about that case other than to say, despite our allegations, that guy remains presumed innocent until and unless he's proven guilty in a court of law. So I want to tell you about the investigation and how we got here as we talk about sort of the status where we're at today. This is in many ways an update as to what we've come across. And at the end of this, and maybe during it, I'm going to make a plea to you that if you know of anybody that has access to other evidence in this case, and my hope is it's video, or I'll even take pictures or sound or something, I still am open to considering all of that in this investigation. But here's what we've got so far. We have a ton of video, and that's been good. And you'll see where the holes in this investigation to some extent exist because of a lack of video. But the source of that video comes from a bunch of different places. Aurora Police Department, they had certain cameras available for certain parts of the traffic and the streets. You'll also see where they had some gaps that they didn't have, like a halo or, Tom, what's the name of that other product they have? Milestone cameras. 9 News, they had a helicopter up there. I know many of you didn't fly your company's helicopters up there, or the Aurora Sentinel, I understand it was grounded. But 9 News was up there, and they had a lot of footage that we were able to get off of their website in order to help us put together some of the actions of this. We also had drone footage operated by sort of just these amateur drone people that were going around covering the protest. We had a ton of cell phone video that we were able to get, but interestingly, not so much from people that were on the ground directly, but through online things, whether it's social media, websites, or whatever. We were able to get a lot of video and piece it together, and you'll see some of that here today. And then, of course, there were body-worn cameras by Aurora Police Department, who's had them in the field now for a long time, even well before SB 217. And you'll see that there's some contact that they had with witnesses that we relied upon. There were also interviews of witnesses, some of which took place on body-worn cameras, some of which took the form of written statements that ultimately resulted in in-person, unrecorded interviews, some recorded. I think Crime Stoppers played a huge role in this. And let me give another shout out to Crime Stoppers. You know, my sense of where we are today in the community is that there may be people who may be in possession of some additional evidence that we haven't been able to consider, and I want to be able to consider it. But maybe they think to themselves, well, I don't know that I trust to give it to Aurora. Maybe I don't even know if I can trust to give it to the DA's office. You can anonymously give it to Crime Stoppers. They'll get it to us for us to consider. We've interviewed more than 30 different witnesses, just 8 from the actual protest, I'd say in the last few weeks that we did this. We also had a technical vehicle analysis done that required us to get a search warrant that we executed on there are 2 vehicles involved here. One will be this blue Jeep. Another will be a white Ford F-150 that you'll see. And we got a search warrant to get from those vehicles their EDR, their electronic data recordings that help us understand what the vehicle was doing just prior to and during the impact that these 2 vehicles had with each other. We also had Faro scans done. They're, in my opinion, moderately helpful, but it's super high-end technology, big data use too, that tries to analyze the vehicles and where they impacted based on all of the evidence that they have. It's somewhat helpful. It doesn't get us to where we need to be on this yet, but we'll talk about that more. So that's what we had to go off of, and we put it together. That was a painstaking process, and I want to tell you, I didn't want to rush to judgment on this. I still haven't rushed to judgment on this. I think this case is too important to the community, and it doesn't matter which side of the protest you come down on, this is important, and I don't want to get it wrong. And so we spent a lot of time trying to uncover every bit of information we could, including, I know that Chief Wilson from Aurora PD, I know that I and the office on the radio, in print, in social media have asked people, if you have additional evidence or video, please give it to us to consider in analyzing this particular case. So on July 25th, there was this pre-planned protest there at the Aurora Municipal Center. These are images from that. We then see that the crowd moves from the Aurora Municipal Center westbound, and this is the direction of travel that they have as they're going to that on-ramp from Arapahoe to northbound I-225. This is some of that imagery as they're heading that direction. There's going to be some video that we play. One of the videos that I think we're just about to see is sort of gives you a perspective of not just the number of people involved, the movement, but also to some extent the chaotic-like environment that was being created by the fact that this portion of it was not pre-planned. There is a permitting process in Aurora to say we want to use a certain stretch of road for a race, for a march, for a rally, a something. None of that happened here that we have any evidence of. And in this next video clip, I hope it plays. I'm not jinxing it. I'm just saying I hope it plays. You will see that there are cars that are just confused as to what to do as these protesters and some of these sort of ad hoc managers of the protest try to give directions of what people should do. Stop here, do this, do that. And that kind of continues through all of this. So this is that first clip.
There's not enough left side traffic control. Stop. Stop. Put your car in park. Put your car in park. Please. Put your car in park. I need a couple people on the front line to ask people to put their car in park ahead of the line. There should also be a line right here holding security.
So you can see that the crowd has spilled over into both east and westbound Alameda at this point as they head westbound towards I-225. So they make their way there. You can see super awesome PowerPoint animations that I spent way too much time on, but to give you the direction of travel onto I-225. And now you can see that they're spilling over. This is Alameda, westbound. This is coming onto that on-ramp for northbound I-225. And I think we have another clip here. Minutes later, both lanes of travel, it's not limited to just northbound I-225, but southbound I-225 is also overrun by protesters. And you can see an image here of what's going on. This is northbound over here on the left. This upper one is southbound. And you can see they have caught unawares a ton of cars that were surrounded by people giving varying instructions. And I have to tell you that the reports that we got from individuals ran the gamut. There were some pretty tense conversations, if I can call them conversations, that took place between the protesters and these vehicles just going about their business. I think it's also important to note at this time, the only people on that highway legally are the people in those vehicles right there. This red truck was one that we got some imagery of, and we were able to get a statement from the driver of the truck. This was the confrontation that took place. This is how it was going down, leading up to when the Jeep finally comes on. He says, my wife was absolutely distraught. She cried for hours afterwards. The young daughter in the car, Daddy, I'm scared. Things like that were going on all over 225. Here's another clip. Well, I guess that wasn't a clip. Hang on. Let me see if I... Nope. As the crowd walked on to northbound I-225, a police motorcycle, Aurora Police Department motorcycle, positioned itself south of the on-ramp from westbound Alameda onto 225. And that ultimately blocked traffic. In fact, no, that's not a good image of it. That's the police officer right here. Alameda is way up here. So it stopped traffic before the on-ramp, but it did not stop traffic onto the on-ramp. This then becomes more of southbound 225 over here. There's a police officer you can see surrounded by the yellow up there trying to stop traffic from coming onto 225 southbound. Coming off onto Alameda from 225 right there. And you can see he's positioned to block that off. As the crowd took over both directions and walked northbound I-225, patrol cars blocked traffic southbound. This is way far ahead north as they're trying to block traffic headed towards where these people are way down there off the camera. Eastbound Alameda northbound intersection was blocked by a female protester on a motorbike. This is the on-ramp from westbound Alameda to northbound I-225. Now keep in mind, this isn't a police officer, this isn't a marked patrol car, there are none at this intersection. This was just some person supportive of the protest who tried to physically put her bike and her between traffic and getting onto that on-ramp. Several other motorists on the on-ramp appeared confused and scared. Lots of pictures and statements to that effect. What you're seeing here at 6:54 p.m. is the Jeep appears to merge on the on-ramp. See this yellow arrow here? This is where the Jeep is crossing. This is Alameda going westbound, looking westbound. There's the Jeep here, and here's the Jeep right here, as it looks like it's going to head on to that on-ramp. It must be coming off of Abilene to get on to northbound I-225. And then there it is right there. There's no police blockade at this intersection, and that is important. There is no police blockade at this intersection. Here's where we have a hole. There are no milestone cameras, halos, pole cams of any kind in this area that we know about that would tell us what took place between that Jeep driver and the motorcycle, the motorbike person, or anybody else on the on-ramp to 225. We have to rely upon statements that were made. We don't have any video of that. There's also no video of the distance from the ramp to where there's a collision between an F-150 I'll talk about in a moment and this blue Jeep. We don't have video of that. We have a couple aerial shots from a drone, still shots, and I'll talk to you about those. But we just don't know what the movements were that took place and whatever confrontations may have happened. Here's some of the drone pictures. The best image of the interstate and crowd before the Jeep arrived is this one right here. You can see this is about the crowd here, and all the people that I'm going to be talking about are in this picture. So I don't know why it flashed twice. Area where the crowd was standing is not visible from the on-ramp. Let me go back to this real quick, and you'll see this. This group of people that are mostly dressed in yellow is kind of that, I think it's that wall of moms. There's the lights on in the back there are part of a vehicle that I believe is the Jeep, and then or Tom, is it this one that's the Jeep in this picture, or is it over here? Let me get the little voodoo thing going there. This one right here? Okay. We do have a better picture than that in my opinion. But area where the crowd was standing is not visible from the on-ramp. So one of the things that we did was to try to figure out, once this guy gets on the on-ramp, once he has this moment where this random motorbike person tries to block him from driving onto the on-ramp and he drives around her, we'll talk about that. When is his first bestest opportunity to figure out, hey buddy, you are driving up on a group of people on the street? And so we sent a traffic investigator with a dash cam down this same stretch of road at approximately the same speed to try to determine when could you see what was coming ahead of you as you pressed on. It isn't good. Not visible from the on-ramp, and one of the things you can't tell from the video and the drone shots that we have is there is a gradual elevation to 225. At a certain point, it begins to dip back down. But for a time, between the turn in the road and the elevation, you just can't see that far down the road. And so here's I think we have this here. Road has a slight incline until you get to the I'm not trying to trigger anyone. I don't know why it's flashing like that. The area where the large crowd was standing, not visible until just south of the 2nd Avenue overpass and looking to the right. Here's the video. This is on the on-ramp northbound 225. Couldn't see the crowd from here. You can see, you can't see over the road, and because of the turn, you can't see around the road.
46 Henry.
46 Henry, go ahead.
Is it this sign, Tom? You'll see this sign in future pictures, but this about right here, we have represented in another photo I'll show you. So that's that sign right up there by the yellow arrow, okay? So that's the Jeep with its lights on in that lane. The motorbike that had been trying to block the on-ramp to 225 ends up giving chase to the Jeep after the Jeep drives around her and gets onto the highway. That's the motorbike back there. And then there's an F-150 truck that's going to play a pretty important role here. That's the truck right there. So you can see where all those people are, and then you see this one line broken off from the rest of these people here. So this is what, because we don't have video of what happens. Let me back up a little bit here. You can see there are some people in the road here. I don't know what they're doing in terms of movements, whether they're getting off the road, whether they're being aggressive to the vehicle. I don't know that. All we have are the statements of the witnesses, and the witnesses that we have, one is a passenger from the Jeep. And I want to make this clear. In no way has that person come forward to be interviewed by us. This was based off of that Facebook something video that they put on, their personal statement or whatever. But this is the quote. "We then avoided any pedestrians in the roadway and continued on to the freeway." That's coming off of that on-ramp. "There was no police barricade that stopped us. Upon getting onto the on-ramp, we did notice there was Black Lives Matter protesters on both sides of the on-ramp. Once we did get on the freeway, off the on-ramp, we did notice that there was additional protesters that were also on the roadway, but on both sides of it." So this is where we're at. We had a distance measured for these. I think it's more of an approximation because I don't think we had the ability to be precise, but we're close. So the Jeep in that photo is about 280 feet south of the F-150. The Jeep is about 440 feet south of that first line of, I guess we can call them the wall of moms. I don't know if that's accurate or not. The F-150 is about 160 feet south of the protesters. That'll be important later when we talk about things like ability to stop and what woulda, coulda happened there. The Jeep passenger goes on to say these protesters then immediately started throwing projectiles at the Jeep that they were in, as well as trying to get in front of the vehicle with bats to damage the vehicle. "We then avoided any pedestrian that tried to get in front of the Jeep, in which case a white pickup truck then began driving right next to us. The white pickup truck then intentionally crashed into us. Once this white pickup truck did crash into us, a man with a bat then approached the vehicle and began swinging at the vehicle. We then proceeded to speed off to avoid any potential damage to ourselves and the vehicle." Again, that's that Facebook posty message. Yeah, that's not from an interview he gave us. He's denied giving us an interview. That's his right to do it, but I'm telling you, we asked. This is what we're going to talk about at this point here. I don't have video of any of these things happening to say that they didn't happen. What I also don't have is video of the collision. We have video of the sound of the collision and everything after, and I'll show you that. So this is the direction of travel that we're pretty confident he must have taken. This white truck was sitting here. Now, this white truck is a guy who originally is confronted when he's trying to get on northbound I-225, and the protesters, rush him, and he says, "Whoa, hang on. I'm supportive of the protest." Maybe he has friends in the protest. I can't remember, Tom. But he says, "I'm here to try to help." So his role, as he's in this lane right here, is to act as security for the protest. So the Jeep then drives around, doesn't hit any of these people, drives around through them to get by. After, according to the passenger, people were attacking their vehicle as they drove by. Then this truck, you'll see, makes a different kind of movement. We have no video of that. Based on the EDR data that is in the F-150 and that is in the Jeep, we know certain things took place. We also have photographs and a Faro scanner. Speed limit on this stretch of road is 65 miles per hour. 5 seconds prior to the collision between the F-150 and the Jeep, the F-150 was going a mere 6 miles per hour, right? And they talk about the slope and the downhill and all this other stuff. That's important. 5 seconds prior to the collision, the Jeep was going 20 miles an hour under the speed limit, 45 miles per hour. And it appears to be coasting, not accelerating at that point. Immediately prior to the collision, at 0.5 seconds, the F-150 begins to depress the accelerator. It's at 100%, can't go more than 100%. And the steering is increased to 15.5 degrees, hard crank to the right. At time zero, the steering's been turned 426.3 degrees to the right, and the accelerator's at 100%. The speed is now increased to 8.2 miles per hour. Same period of time we're talking about. The Jeep has accelerated to a high of 47 miles an hour up to about 1.2 seconds prior, and stays at that speed for about 0.6 seconds. At 0.6 seconds, it drops off. At 0.7 seconds, the brakes are pressed hard enough that the ABS locks up on it. At impact, with this truck that drives into the Jeep, and I want to make that clear, there had been initial media reports that this Jeep had smashed into this truck. That is not how it went down. This truck, by the driver's words and conduct, deliberately drove his truck into that Jeep. 40 miles per hour is as fast as the Jeep was going at the time of impact. Now, what we're going to see here is the closest thing we have to a video that can tell us what took place at the time of the collision, and it's only sound. You'll hear that the collision happens, and then you'll start to see the reaction from people. That's the closest thing we have to video of that collision. We don't have anything from 9 News, we don't have anything from a drone, we don't have anything from cell phones, other than this clip right here. The collision was 3,000 feet from Alameda, where this Jeep had gotten onto the on-ramp. It would have taken, and this is important because we talked about the speeds that they were traveling, it would have taken about 105 feet to brake and stop at 47 miles per hour. That's important because the collision, he's more than 150 feet away from the line of protesters. After the collision, this is that truck. We saw that on the ground video of that. This is the truck. This is the Jeep as they begin to move forward northbound onto this. And you can see now people are starting to move out of the way. We have another video, and this is, I think this is the one on the opposite side of the street that you can see the Jeep drive through it here. Let's see. Well, I guess only if George knows how to do the technology. Get over! Get over! Watch over here on the left. So they actually end up and surrounding the truck and treat the truck like it's part of this thing too. They don't know the role that this guy is playing. So they rushed the truck. They wanted to rush the Jeep, but the Jeep kept going. They rushed the truck, and the truck driver can be seen saying, whoa, 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 no, I'm one of y'all. I'm here to help try to protect this thing. And then they get off of the truck. Crowd begins to clear a path, and I'll show you some stills, and then we'll show the video of how it happened. But you can see here they start to get off of the road, and that there's almost nobody on northbound 225 as the Jeep starts to drive through where the crowd had been. But you will see, and you can sort of tell in the stills, there are people who rush into the street to try to throw things at the Jeep. And the Jeep navigates either around them or just keeps going. This is, and I told you I'd make passing reference, and I want to remind people that even though we have accused this guy of certain crimes, he is presumed innocent and will remain that way until he's convicted, and unless he's convicted in a court of law. But this is our alleged shooter right here. There's the Jeep. You'll see some of these people. These aren't people that are just standing there helpless. These are people who rushed to the Jeep to confront it. More views of the different lanes of traffic that are being covered. Here's that video. And watch over here on the left. That's after the sound of the collision. The Jeep is ultimately going to get off on 6th Avenue and make contact with the very first police officers it can encounter. And mercifully for these guys, it's right off of that off-ramp. It's right there. This is again our alleged shooter firing at the Jeep after it had passed. Here's another view. I'm trying to give you what video we had to try to piece this thing together.
I told you! Get the license plate! That's what the Aurora Police Department did! That's what they did!
That voice, you'll recognize that voice from one of the earlier videos on the westbound Alameda part as he's giving directions to cars. This guy has a lot of video and a lot of running narrative. And one clip I didn't put in here is early on, as they are coming onto northbound I-225, he can be heard walking behind, looking and seeing that there isn't any protection behind them from vehicles getting onto the highway. And he says, this isn't good. This isn't good. We need, I can't remember the words he used, but some kind of line or something like that. We need protection. This isn't good. And that's what he's making reference to here. When that car comes through, it's almost like, I told you so. I told you that this was an issue. So we had some accident analysis done. You've seen some of it already. An estimate was made based on the distance of the road markings and the vehicle travel over a period of time, and we came up with these. The first 40 feet that we see as the Jeep starts to go into this, it's traveling at about 29 miles per hour. This is all post-collision. And you can see the pictures here. As you know from the video, these are all people who came out to confront the Jeep. That second 40 feet, it's now increased its speed to about 40 miles per hour. And in that final 40 feet, as it has cleared by the folks, it gets up to about 51 miles per hour. Through the entire distance, and you saw the video of it, this Jeep really stays in the center lanes of the highway here. I want to tell you why that's important. In trying to assess what the mindset, and this matters when we talk about potential charges, the mindset of the driver, seeing that post-collision conduct, and he has the ability, in my opinion, to swerve left, swerve right, do a whole bunch of things that would indicate some sort of intent or maliciousness on his part in trying to hurt someone. He does exactly the opposite. It seems to me, based on that video, what I have seen there is that he avoids people wherever possible and just tries to get out of there. That's what it looks like. Here's another video right after, and by the way, the Jeep is not the only car that does this, and that question came up. There were a ton of cars afterwards that got on to northbound 225 before, right after the Jeep, and they were confronted by the protesters, and it was in In some of these images, you may have caught people holding either bats or umbrellas. There were a couple images that I didn't put up here, some stills that we took, where there was a woman who was carrying a sidearm. This was a group that came prepared, it seems to me, to do more than to just protest, but they were prepared for something else. And you start to see it showing up here in these post-Jeep cars. This is another video that we had. This is just right after the collision. That's right after, isn't it, Tom? And this is a car that is just driving along, doesn't know what's going on either, seconds later.
Fuck up! You don't have to run into people. I have kids. Okay, so slow it. You have kids. You don't have to run into the hospital. Hey, back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up, please.
I'll pause it for a moment. One of the things that shows up in a lot of these videos is these are folks, too, that are giving directions to people to do, no joke, turn around and head back down the wrong way, down northbound I-225. These cars that you can I'm sorry, I restarted. You can see there's confusion. They don't know if they should go down that way because cars are still coming, or if they should just sit there. And I'm sorry I started over, but you'll see some cars around here in this weird posture trying to turn around.
You don't have to run into people. I have kids. Okay, so slow it. You have kids. You don't have to run into the hospital. Hey, back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up, please. Hey, let's go! Hey, let's go! Turn around! Turn around! Hey! On that side of the road. That way. That way. That way. Turn around. Go that way. Come on. Go that way.
Vicky, are you trying to get my attention? He's got kids in the car, and I can't remember where he was getting his kids to. Tom, where did he say? He was trying to get his kids to the hospital. That was the guy they threw the bike in front of and confronted. Some of those other cars, you can tell they're hesitant to follow these instructions because of the chaos that's there. They're being told to drive back down the road where they just saw another car come up. Other people are giving different directions. Just pull over, just stop. It's chaotic on this highway. Oh, sorry. This is an Aurora police officer who talked to the Jeep driver. There's also some body cam of the Jeep driver's statements, pretty consistent with this. Said he was on the way to the airport to drop off his friend. We saw the passenger statements already. At some point, he said his vehicle began to be surrounded by protesters on I-225. He said they were throwing rocks at his car, and because of this, he tried driving northbound on I-25 near East Alameda Avenue to get away. At some point, he said he collided with a white truck, said he driving because the protesters were trying to attack his vehicle. When he got off the 6th Avenue exit, he contacted police. He did, immediately. We have video of that. I think you'll see that. I confirmed with dispatch that the driver of the truck never called the police after the collision. Officer James Snap interviewed the driver of the motorbike. The motorbike said that she was participating in the protest and assisting protesters trying to block traffic from northbound I-225 from Alameda. She said while blocking the road, she observed the blue Jeep jump over the curb, drive onto the sidewalk and the median, and then onto northbound I-225 on the ramp. She said that the Jeep struck another vehicle and nearly hit numerous people. She chased the Jeep on her motorcycle and said she was very concerned because she had family in the protest. This is the northbound, I think, on-ramp, but this is, Tom, what's this one? Is that the... Before they go on to the interstate, and then she comes around and tries to block. That's right. So this is, I think, the southbound off-ramp from... Southbound, she's on the southbound off-ramp from 225. She's going to come down, curve left, and try to go over here to set up and block them from getting onto the northbound thing. This is her in that blown-up image that we have. That's another picture of her that we took from video. This is that right off of the 6th Avenue exit. There's our blue Jeep that pulls over immediately to contact the Aurora police. There's our motorbike person right there. There's the motorbike person right there. I wonder if I have video of this. Nope. Here's a statement from Officer Mullins from Aurora. Vehicle pulled up behind us. 2 male occupants exited when they were advised that they were on I-220. Oh, they advised they were on I-225 when people had begun hitting their vehicle with guitars. And I actually think there was a guitar that was actually used to hit the Jeep. The driver then advised that he was hit by a white lifted truck when he was attempting to leave the area. As he was attempting to leave, he stated a motorcyclist began driving erratically after him. Actually, this might be that video clip.
Sorry.
He just ran right to the fight. You need to take a second too. What just happened?
There's like 1,000 people in front of me.
Okay. Take A second. I'm not going to have you sitting here yelling at everybody. Take a breath. That's my fault. I'll let him say. Sir, you're with him. You're going to step over here with me. My partner's going to stand here.
Drivers
hey,
in blue, passengers in white.
What is wrong with these people?
So we currently have protests going on in the city of Aurora. It's about us, okay? So when you guys walk up on us like that and you start yelling, it's going to make me super nervous. So I understand your frustration.
I'm on your team 100%.
I get it. So just take a couple breaths for me because right now that's a high escalated situation, all right? So she's saying you tried to run her over. What happened?
Not true.
Focus on me. On me.
So they blocked
Focus on her. On me.
Please.
Yeah, I do. Focus on her. So we are trying to move out of this area because they're coming this way. That's why we're trying to get this dealt with. What happened?
So they blocked an intersection. She attempts to go in front of me, so I attempt to avoid her. So I go up over the curb to avoid her going straight out in front of me.
Okay.
And then...
Are you on ops?
And then all of these people
So ops was airing this info. What's time on?
All of these people just start driving in front of us.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to get... This is a $70,000 car.
I understand. Ops was airing this info as they were pulling up. So if she's the motorcyclist that's a part of the protest, then she probably more than likely did this. But she's stating that he was trying to run her over. He's saying he was just trying to get out of the way of all the protesters.
This is my fucking baby.
I understand.
And as far as
right
the car,
now,
we were in the same lane.
are you guys in
That
it right
car on
now?
the right swerved because they're going like bitches. I don't know why they have guitars on the freeway. So he swerved and tried to come into our lane, and then that's how it happened.
Okay. So do you need medical attention at all? Okay. So
Tom, I don't think there's anything else.
You don't need medical
comes out of this
attention?
part.
Okay.
Sorry.
There's also a video.
You need to take a second.
I mean, my car's going to be ruined if it stays here, right?
Probably. I won't lie to you.
Oh, this is additional video of around the corner where they moved the Jeep.
What
They moved the Jeep out of
with the
concern
accident?
for their own safety.
So we were at an intersection, and that girl on the motorcycle was just driving back and forth. So I went up over.
This is on Alameda?
Alameda, yeah.
225, okay.
I went up over the curb to try and avoid her because her and all these other people were just like waving stuff and being crazy. So I went around them. I got on the freeway, and I'm trying to avoid everything. And a guy was in the far left lane and cut straight over and went right into my fender.
Can you get a towing services started here for me? We'll see if we can get that for you so we can get out of here ASAP. And then, so you hit the wall?
No, I hit it. There was another truck.
You hit the other truck?
Yeah, because
Do you know where that other truck is?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I
Did
just-
you hit
because-
anyone or just the?
No,
Okay.
we were not near any other.
Okay. Do you need medical attention, man?
No, I don't think so right now. But then they just started throwing rocks. They hit me with like.
Are you okay? But you're okay. We're gonna do an accident report for you, and then we'll go from there. But I think the best thing right now is just to get the truck out of here. So we ordered it to tow for you, and then we'll go from there.
There's also another officer sort of stationed at this location right here, has visibility of 225, and he gives a statement. It's in small type, and forgive me for that, but in essence, he's talking about what he observes leading up to the gunshots. I heard approximately 6 gunshots. Witness what appeared to be the Jeep tire smoke, and you could sort of see some of that in the video. Jeep then took off northbound at a high rate of speed. This is that Jeep in that parking lot. The pictures that are taken on the back side, these are 2 bullet strikes on the back of that Jeep that had driven through. These are the 2 people that were shot. These arrows do not reflect the direction of travel of the rounds. So that's it. That's what we have. That's all the evidence that we had that really ties into helping me make a decision about what to do here. So in order to understand where we're at today with this status update today, the standard for filing charges for prosecution ethically is that I have to have a good faith basis to believe that a specific crime, and that specific crime has to be the one charged, was committed by the specific defendant. I also, this is prong 2, even if I have a good faith basis to believe those things, I have to have a reasonable likelihood of success at trial. Both of those things you should consider as we go through what we've identified as the potential charges here. This is American Bar Association Standard 3-4.3a. It doesn't matter to you other than to tell you I'm not making up these standards. This is the standard across the country. A prosecutor should only file charges if the prosecutor reasonably believes that the admissible evidence will be sufficient to support a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a big deal. Relationship with the media, and this is why I'm talking to you today about this. I may make a public statement explaining why criminal charges have been thus far declined or why they get dismissed. What I can't do, and the reason we don't do this on cases that we're moving forward on at the time, is I can't have this detailed conversation with you about a case that has already been charged and in court because of the potential for it tainting a future jury pool and creating an unfair trial environment, and I don't want to do that. So this is why we're having this conversation. Here are the potential charges we looked at. I am so sorry that the animation keeps blinking. Obstructing a highway is a pretty obvious charge here, and these are the words. If someone intentionally, knowingly, or even recklessly obstructs a highway, and that's which the public had access to, use for passage of persons, vehicles, whether the obstruction arose from their acts alone or in conjunction with someone else. Now that's important here because if you look at the pictures in the video, just about everybody, not a regular person driving a car, is arguably in violation of this law. That includes the motorbike driver. That includes every single person you saw standing on that highway. There is no First Amendment exception to obstructing a highway. There is no had a really good reason to obstruct a highway. There is no justice for any individual exception to obstructing a highway. Now, my point in bringing this up is twofold. One, at this point, I've made the decision that there isn't going, other than people already charged in this case, I am not going to be pursuing investigation or criminal charges for a violation of this particular law for those folks out on July 25th, 2020. One of the reasons I'm doing that is I don't want anybody who may have been a witness to the pieces we don't have video for to be afraid to approach us with the evidence that they have, worried that they're signing themselves up for some sort of criminal charge. That is not going to happen here. I am interested in the truth. I'm interested in what evidence exists. And to the extent that I have the discretion to withhold charging in this environment, to do that, I'm going to do it. But I should tell you, this particular statute is not a throwaway statute. It's a third-class misdemeanor. And what that means is a conviction for it is a potential $750 fine and up to 6 months in the county jail. The statute of limitations is 18 months, and that's important because the decision that I make here today, I'm willing to be bound by it to encourage people to come forward with any evidence that they have. But I will tell you, whether it's me or whoever my successor is, if something like this were to happen again with those same people, they would not be bound to not pursue this particular event and these charges. But I will bind myself for now for the purposes of trying to get this information to us so that we can come to the best decision possible. In terms of the motorbike, they fit into that too. There is no lawful authority to block an on-ramp to any highway in the state of Colorado because you just have a good reason for it. That's not how it works. Law enforcement could have, should have, would have been involved in this, but they weren't told about it. It looks to me, based on the things that we've seen, that Aurora scrambled to try to figure out the best way possible once this thing unfolded to protect the protesters. But this one piece, this Alameda to northbound I-225 was the one big hole. Talk about the F-150. The F-150, there's no doubt, at least based on the information that we have and the statements that were taken from the driver, that his conduct in turning his truck into that Jeep was intentional. It was not accidental. It wasn't reckless. It was on purpose. It was intentional. I will tell you that I do not intend to pursue charges against that F-150 driver at this time. And I just tell you that my sense of it is, given his vantage point, the role that he believed he was playing, and his observations, I do think that a jury could pretty credibly find that this guy thought he was doing something to protect other people. And so at this point, I'm not going to pursue charges on that particular driver for the conduct based on that evidence that we have. Again, new evidence comes forward. I might revisit that, but this is the status where we're at today. Now, the Jeep, that's the one that everybody in the community has been talking about. What about this Jeep? Now, to some extent, we're way behind the social media and mainstream media on this. I've seen even in editorials from the Denver Post the statement that surely there must be charges that can be found against this Jeep driver. That was before we'd even completed our investigation. On social media, as you know, if you've looked at it, it's more extreme than that. And so I want to go through all the charges that we could think of that you might argue could have fit here. First is attempted first-degree murder. That's what attempt murder 1 means. That is a second-class felony. There are only 6 in the state of Colorado. First class, as you can imagine, is murder. That's life without parole. Second-class felony would be 16 to 48 years in the Department of Corrections. It has elements. And so for someone to be accused of and ultimately convicted of first-degree murder, I got to prove that they acted after deliberation and with the intent to cause the death of another person. I don't see that here. I don't have that evidence here. There is nothing that we've heard in terms of objective statements. There's nothing I've seen in terms of pictures, video, conduct before, conduct after, that tells me that this was a person who was intent on trying to kill another person or persons. I just don't see it. This is the definition, by the way, of after deliberation. We'll talk intentionally. After deliberation means that they had to make the decision to act, but only after the exercise of reflection and judgment concerning the act. Intentionally, and those are both prongs in first-degree murder, it has to be their conscious objective to try to kill someone. I don't see it in the evidence that we have. Now, there's a class below that called attempted second-degree murder. And by the way, before we get there, I should tell you, nobody was injured during this. Nobody was struck by any vehicle that I'm aware of. There were no complaints of injuries related to the Jeep, either the collision by the F-150, and you heard the officer ask the passenger, do you need medical attention? I don't know of a single person other than those people shot by the individual that we filed a case against who were injured during this protest. Attempted second-degree murder is a third-class felony that's punishable by 10 to 32 years in the Department of Corrections, but it has certain requirements too. It requires that a person acts knowingly in engaging in that conduct. They have to take a substantial step towards causing the death of another person. And again, with the evidence that we have right now and the information that we have, I don't see it. I don't see it. And even if you could squint real hard and say, I think I can make a case for it, this isn't a winner in front of a jury, and I've only been doing this 26 years. This is not something I could prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and I don't believe it. Not at this point. The knowingly definition in there with respect to conduct or circumstance described by the statute, and that would be the attempted second-degree murder, he's got to be aware that his conduct of such a nature, that such circumstance exists, that he's going to kill someone. That's not any of the evidence that I've seen here. We can keep going down the list, and there's another potential charge, and that would be the attempted reckless manslaughter. That is a 5th-class felony. It is 1 to 3 years in the Department of Corrections, but is also probation eligible. It is not like the attempted murder charges that you are going to go to prison. It is a probation eligible 1 to 3 year charge. It requires that a person has to have the intent, that's for the attempted part, to commit the reckless manslaughter. And they have to engage in conduct that is strongly corroborative of that. In reviewing what I have presented to you here, it is difficult for me to conclude that there is evidence strongly corroborative of this person's willingness to engage in behavior that would lead to the death of another person. Now, because we're missing that video stuff in advance, we have some of those pictures. Some of the things I have to rationalize is if this guy wants to run into people, he had plenty of opportunity to do it way before. If this guy is indifferent to running into people, he had plenty of opportunity to demonstrate that indifference before the collision. After the collision, it appears to me, based on the video and the pictures that we have, it's the opposite. This guy has plenty of opportunity to not care where he is on the road. Instead, given the circumstances, he exhibits, in my opinion, care to not strike another person. Reckless endangerment is another step down. That is a 3rd-class misdemeanor. It is punishable by 6 months in the county jail. It's just like obstructing a highway. $750 fine, of course, 18-month statute of limitations on that. A person unlawfully and recklessly engages in conduct which created a substantial risk of serious bodily injury to another person. Now, this one, it seems to me, is getting closer to a potential charge that might fit. But the problem is, I don't see the conduct where he is exhibiting that or creating that substantial risk of serious bodily injury. the distance that he travels to get the off-road stuff that he does to get around the bike, he was under no legal obligation to stop there, and it seems to me he engaged in the safest possible behavior to continue his trip down the on-ramp. I'm not telling you everybody would have made the same decision. What I'm telling you is the decision he made was not a criminal one. And it doesn't give me the sense that he was creating a substantial risk of death to anyone else. The rest of that trip, and this is the reason we sent the Aurora police officer out, was to try to gauge when does he first have the opportunity to see that what he's coming upon. And you can see from the cars that came behind him too, they didn't have any idea either. And that was after the collision, after the gunshots. He continues on, and at some point he is struck by this truck. And now, and again, because, and you should know this, I've made efforts to interview this guy. I made personal outreach to his attorney to interview this guy. And they exercised their right to not talk to the district attorney. But based on what we see here, once he's struck by the truck, it seems to me the question that has to be asked when you're gauging recklessness after that fact is, what were the alternatives? And does it make sense to ask someone whose truck, by the passenger statements, have been attacked leading up to the collision with the truck, and now the truck slams into them, do you just stop and see what happens in this environment? Or do you try to press on at 29 miles an hour with a wheel coming off and avoid everybody else that remains on the road, even the ones that run out to try to get you? And it looks to me like that is what was attempted here. A person acts recklessly when he consciously disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk. You might take a snippet in time and say, what about here or what about there? But it seems to me this guy's conscious efforts, demonstrated efforts to not strike another person, cuts against that, at least given the evidence that we have now. Reckless driving is, again, another step down. Now we've left the misdemeanor world. We're now in traffic offense world, where I think the maximum punishment is 90 days jail, 8 points on your license, and a $300 fine. Similar analysis in terms of the recklessness piece you can see there, except this one goes in reckless endangerment and reckless manslaughter don't use this precise language, a wanton or willful disregard for the safety of persons and property. I don't think I can make a successful case for willful and wanton disregard. Careless driving is kind of the bottom rung of this thing. That is also a traffic offense, but it is a 4-point violation instead of an 8-point violation. It is not a major traffic offense the way reckless is. The reason that matters is 3 major traffic offenses in a 7-year period, your license gets suspended. That's not true about careless driving. This is this person driving without due regard for all attendant circumstances on the road. And I want to make this clear. Despite the fact that nobody on their feet on that highway had the legal authority to be there, that does not deprive them of the protection of the law when it comes to vehicles. It doesn't just become a free-for-all and cars can go do whatever they want to do. So the fact that they were an attendant circumstance, this was something the Jeep driver had to take into consideration. But given all of the other factors and the evidence that we have, I don't think I win this charge either. There was potential for leaving the scene of the accident, but I've highlighted the important language here. I mean, clearly he leaves the scene of the accident. That white truck slams into him. Failed to immediately stop the vehicle at the scene of the location or as close thereto as possible. Now, without interviewing this guy, best guess is truck slams into you after stating that your car had been attacked by these other protesters on the road as they approached. Probably not thinking it was safe to stop there and exchange insurance information. But what he does do is stop as quickly as possible afterwards where there is law enforcement to say what happened and to talk about the collision. This is not a winner in court either. By the way, leaving the scene of an accident, 12-point traffic offense, punishable by up to 90 days and I think another $300 fine. Statute of limitations is important here. On those felony charges, actually the upper end charge, on attempt murder, are we unlimited, Clinton, on statute of limitations? But what is it? It's long. It's not your typical 3 years, it's something else. Typical felony, like that attempted reckless manslaughter, has a 3-year statute of limitations. The misdemeanor's 18 months, traffic 6 months. That's important. Because as I stand here today asking for the public's help in uncovering any additional evidence in this case, you should know that that time still exists on a decision to not file at this moment. There's still time to do this. if we get the evidence that can make a difference in this. But as of right now, I don't believe that I have it. That's why I put up that slide there. That's what I have for this presentation, but I'd like to open it up to questions. Anything that you have.
It seems like the main reason, I just want to stress this point again, that the reason there's a missing link here, you're talking about a certain stretch of video. Is that what you're saying? Is that crucial missing piece?
I'm saying that there are pieces of evidence that are significant, that are missing. Whether or not they would change the ultimate outcome, I can't know for sure, right? I would love it if there was some type of milestone camera or halo camera over that on-ramp to 225 so that we could see the confrontation or know if there was some sort of an exchange of information. I'd love to see that stretch before the collision. Hell, I'd love to see the collision. I don't have any of that. Now, that doesn't mean we could never move forward on a case like that. We move forward on cases without video all the time. But in a case like this, where I am left to try to piece together what was in this driver's head without the benefit of me interviewing him myself or having an experienced detective do it, I'm left to try to piece together what's going on in his head based on his conduct before and after. And I think that the analysis of these charges against the Jeep driver changes with each stretch of that road. So for instance, once he's struck by that truck, what would a normal person in that situation do? And if someone back there is watching this on Facebook Live saying, well, I would have stopped and tried to figure out why they hit me. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have stopped on that road. I don't know anybody that would have. But he presses on, and these people have moved out of the road. Now there's gunfire. What should he have done after there was gunfire? Pull over and find out why people are shooting at him? No, I wouldn't have. I'd have kept going. So we have to take this apart piece by piece to try to figure out if we're going to allege some sort of a crime. It's never just what happened, it was what was intended, the culpable mental state, what was in the head. Not having that video leaves me in a position to have to rely upon a couple witness statements. They're not always consistent. Everybody has a different perception. But the video before and after kind of helped me really come up with the conclusion there. Well, I can subpoena him, but as you might guess, under the Constitution of the United States, nobody can be compelled to give a statement against their own interest. So this guy has an attorney, which means I can't reach out to him. I could, let's hypothetically, we gin up the grand jury, and I subpoena him into the grand jury. He could just sit there and say, hard pass, not talking. And the only way I could make him talk was to grant him immunity. Well, I'm not going to do that. I don't know what happened. What am I granting him immunity from? I'm not going to do that. So we're stuck. And that, by the way, that's in most of the cases that we have. It is infrequent that we get someone, especially after they have obtained counsel, where we ever get the chance to interview them.
George, an interesting question. Why all the secrecy regarding this announcement, this press conference, the location, all that?
I don't know about the secrecy part of it. We kind of came to the conclusion, we'd started talking about, look, we need to do this at some point. Timing matters, I think, given everything else that's going on in the community and in the country. We didn't want to pile on to other issues. I wanted this to be something that the community could reflect upon individually. So we'd sort of thought we would do it here, but we really didn't nail it down until, about 4 o'clock last night, Vicki, when you reached out and said, hey, we're a go on this thing. In terms of not publicizing it more, I don't know what our normal practice is, but I imagine this was a matter of us using a secure facility and making sure that we had the logistics in place to make sure we could accommodate all the media.
So you guys asked us specifically not to disclose this case, which is something that you guys meant to do.
Okay.
Why did you guys decide to do that?
I presume it was just a matter of safety. That's my sense. From those who would come here for purposes other than to just, hey, hear out what has happened and maybe even ask some questions. That's my guess.
You're worried about protesters angry about this?
I don't know. I mean, look, they're going to be angry one way or another, I'm sure, based on some of the conclusions they've already drawn, absent the evidence. But I don't know if that was the single overriding factor, but I can imagine that being a factor for this facility. I mean, look, this isn't our building. We had to ask someone to let us use this building. I've got to take into consideration their concerns, too, for their own staff and other things like that. So this was a plan that seemed like it worked out best. Yes, ma'am? I'll be candid with you. I haven't reviewed all the evidence that we have in the case with the individual that we have charged with pulling the trigger. I haven't reviewed all that evidence. I haven't reviewed all of the evidence in detail with the other individuals that have been charged as part of multiple dates, this being one of them, and you know what I'm talking about, the protester leadership stuff. So I can't tell you if there's something out there that would have given me pause or concern, but certainly the experienced prosecutors that I have taken a look at this have expressed none of that to me. When I reviewed this particular incident, the only thing that I would give by way of, not even admonition, but correction for the future is, and again, I don't slight Aurora for this because they were given no advance notice that this was going to happen, is you got to have someone there at that on-ramp from Alameda to 225. And my guess is for every protest from here on out, they will. And my guess is they'll also have video there moving forward. But at this time, that's the only piece that I think could have likely not prevented the protest from spilling onto the highway, but could have prevented even the Jeep or any of those other vehicles from getting onto the highway. Oh, I haven't been made aware of anything, any other allegations of criminal conduct on anybody's behalf, whether it's law enforcement or protesters or otherwise. This analysis here that I gave you covered more than just the Jeep. It covered the truck, the protesters, the motorbike, because this was the incident that we were looking at specifically to talk about today. But I'm not aware of any other charges. Clinton, are you aware of anything else that we have going on by way of potential charges? Okay. That's, does that answer the question? Well, what I don't want to do is start talking about the other instances where we have filed a case and it's pending. Those are different ethical rules that I haven't put up here, 3.6, 3.8. I don't want to get into the details of those. I wouldn't go through this kind of an analysis on those pending cases. And to the extent that there may be an investigation going on that I'm just not aware of, I wouldn't want to talk about that either, just an abundance of caution. Sir? Well, the timeline is really dictated by the law, and that is that statute of limitations. Look, Clinton's got his hand up. Yes, sir? Despite what you had said right here on Facebook Live moments ago. It's all right. Clean out your desk. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. That really dictates when we could change our mind about moving forward on this. So I can't tell you that, like, if I don't get any other videos by such and such a date, I will forever deem this closed. No prosecutor worth their salt would do that. What I'm saying as of today, with as much effort, resources as we put into this, this is where I'm at. There aren't going to be any charges unless I can come up with, or someone can come up with for me, some additional evidence that would help change the way that we view this thing at the moment. And I thought it was important, rather than to just sit on it and let you guys keep asking every week, how about now, how about now, how about now? This is where we're at. I'm not waiting on any more interviews. I'm not waiting on any more data. I'm not waiting on any more analysis. This is it. This is everything we have, and this is where I believe we're at. So the statement that we have from whatever that passenger put on Facebook or whatever social media account he used, and I don't know which one, but I've seen the video, those are the quotes that we put up there, where he talks about that stretch of road before they get hit by the truck, that these protesters were, I can't remember if it was throwing rocks, maybe the Jeep driver said that, or attacking them with bats. Was it bats, Tom? Throwing projectiles, that's what it was. That's what we have from that. So you can see the image of the Jeep in what I believe is like lane number 1 or 2 on the highway northbound. And you can see people not surrounding it, like rubbing up against it, but in that area where the Jeep is. And then the Jeep must navigate around them because he ends up in that lane where the white truck swerves into his left front wheel. That's what we have. That's the information that we have. Based on his statement. We did our office interview him or did Aurora? Tom? Okay, so it sounds like both of us, Aurora PD and our office. not the passenger. He wouldn't talk to us. The driver of the F-150. Tom, you had something. Yeah. Okay. Do we know the extent of the injuries on that? We don't know what that means. Okay, thanks for correcting me on that. Yeah. They talked to Aurora PD at the scene, and I think those are the body cam videos that we saw, both right off of 6th Avenue there and then in that parking lot that they moved to. Those are the only ones I'm aware of. Tom, are you aware of any other interviews? And I will tell you, Tom worked this and Tom Burns is the chief deputy assigned to this, one of our best. And Tom made multiple efforts at outreach to these guys, and they had said through their attorneys, no. I personally called the attorney of the Jeep driver to say, this is important, I want to do this. And you can imagine that when you have the right to not talk to the DA, it's pretty easy to say, no, I don't want to talk to the DA. How are we doing that, Vicki, with the stuff we displayed here today? I guess my question is, are we handling the request, since it's not a case that we're filing at the moment? Are we the people they file the CORA with, or they do that with Aurora PD? Okay, so Aurora PD. Okay. Well, I don't know if they could say it's politically motivated. I don't know how politics factors into it. I would tell you that my analysis would be identical if it was a group of pro-life protesters that spilled onto the highway after confronting some Planned Parenthood clinic. Same exact analysis I would go through. The issues that they were confronting don't matter to me. What matters to me is the conduct on the road and whether there are real victims out there or people that really violated the law. But your question about concern is legitimate. I am concerned. I think that the environment in which we find ourselves right now, especially in this part of the community, there is a bloodlust that has been building up to hold people accountable for these wrongs. They perceive, I've seen people on social media say this. This person is an attempted murderer. They need to be charged. We've seen it with the police from the Elijah McClain incident. We've seen it from other things. These cops need to be prosecuted. We know there were crimes. These people need to be charged. That is driven from a very intense emotional position that my guess is isn't going to be assuaged or mitigated against by facts. And that's why I took the time to put this together, was to say, I don't take this decision lightly. I could have issued a piece of paper that said, I've reviewed this, and I don't think there are charges, peace out. That would not have been respectful of this community. That would not have been respectful of this process. That's why I'm standing here trying to answer every question, is to say, I am concerned. I want people to understand this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction, and the door isn't closed forever on these things. But what I have right now, I have revealed to you, and it puts me in a position that I don't think I can ethically, properly move forward using the state's authority against this Jeep driver. And I'm not going to use it against the protesters at the moment that haven't been charged, or the motorbike driver. And those are more acts of discretion where I think I could have moved forward, but I'm choosing not to. This one with the Jeep driver, that isn't the situation. I don't think I can ethically move forward. Typically what would happen in a case is Aurora might either scratch out a summons for traffic or misdemeanors, and then we get it through the normal process, or they submit a filing to our office for felony charges. Because of the nature of how this thing happened, we intervened pretty early in the process, and we never got that far. Instead, we said, hang on. I want to take a personal look at this. I want our office to be invested in the investigation piece for some reasons you could likely predict, whether it's optics or otherwise, and just make sure we get at the ground level. So I don't recall, and I'll ask Clinton, did they ever come forward with, hey, we think these charges happened, or was it just the investigation that we sort of ended up taking over? Okay. No ticket scratched at the scene. And, you know, I hope you could tell from some of the video there, the reason that Jeep gets moved to that parking lot is the police are concerned about safety, and they have been told by intel that this group is moving up I-225 towards their area, and they're like, this isn't safe for you guys to be around. Let's move you around the corner where we're out of the way. Anything else you guys can think of? Any questions at all? Yes, ma'am?
If, by no fault of your own, you find yourself in a vehicle surrounded by a hostile crowd and you fear for your life, what can you do to remove yourself from the crowd?
Well, I don't think the law changes for anybody based on the circumstances. It's how you interpret it and act on it. So you have the right to defend yourself or others from what you believe to be the unlawful use of force against them that might put them in imminent fear of serious bodily injury or death, that kind of thing. You have the ability to defend yourself, and you have the ability to defend others. To some extent, that defend others piece, I think, factored into our analysis of the F-150 truck in terms of what it did. What I don't want to do is leave the public with the idea that, hey, if you ever happen to find yourself on a highway that has been taken over, lawfully or otherwise, by protesters, you can do whatever you want. That is not the case here. And if I thought for a moment that I had evidence here that supported a charge of putting these people's lives in danger because of something that took place, but I wouldn't hesitate to prosecute that case. That is not the issue here. So when someone finds themselves in that situation, as you can tell, it's very fact-specific. It's very situation-specific. In this particular instance, I try to put myself in the position of each of these different people and ask myself, what am I perceiving? If I'm in there, what is going on in my head when I see this? And if I'm in that Jeep, absent being able to talk to that Jeep driver, I'm thinking to myself, what has happened here? I thought I was driving around some folks on the on-ramp so I could get on the highway to take my buddy to the airport. Instead, he comes off the on-ramp, starts to see a smattering of people, and I'm guessing that he's thinking, what in the world is going on here? But he's not going to stop because these people have moved towards him, according to the passenger and him, throwing projectiles. So he's going to push on. And they get past that 2nd Street overpass where that sign was, and now he can see, holy smokes, there are people, a ton of people up ahead. Then the truck strikes him. My guess is when that happens, pretty scary moment. Now what do you do? I should stop and try to figure out what the heck's going on here. And by the way, we can look at this by minute, almost second-by-second analysis for that moment of time on that highway, but we can't completely divorce it from everything else that we've been inundated with through media, and that is we've seen what's happened in other cities with some of these protests that have taken place where people have been driving, both the bad conduct by drivers and the bad conduct by some of the protesters. I don't know if these guys saw any of that because I haven't been able to ask them, but I have. That's what I'd be thinking when I was driving down there, like, holy smokes, what have I gotten myself into? How do I get out of here? What am I going to do? And then things just went really crazy after that. So I don't have advice for people then other than to tell them, you don't have to be abused. You have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to defend someone else. Say that again, sir? Yeah. Well, I think to some extent, it wasn't like a year later, a month later, an hour later. It was directly after this thing happened, between the Lexus driver, which came up really behind the Jeep and the truck in succession, and these other vehicles. There's 2 important reasons why we showed the other vehicles coming. One is, these are also people who, by the way, weren't confronted by the motorbike because the motorbike had given chase to the Jeep. These are people who saw the same exact stuff the Jeep did, and they pressed on too. Not because they were out there trying to run over protesters or kill people. They didn't know what the hell was going on either. So you have that vehicle trying to get their kid to a hospital. They're not thinking protest. They don't know there's a protest until they're on it. That's what's important about that. Same thing with the Lexus driver. Same thing with that other vehicle. That was the vehicle where they threw the bike in front of it. And the other vehicles that you can see where they're telling them to turn around, it also highlights just the chaotic environment that existed. Those are the reasons why I think all those things are important. Why in the world do you want to bring up Nate Meyer? Why would you do that in this setting? I'm kidding. It's Nate Meyer. It was earlier this year. Okay. So we'd had, coincidentally, Aurora Police Department, I think a sergeant, a guy named Nate Meyer, who had been contacted in the middle of the road out by Buckley Air Force Base, showed a jillion signs of intoxication at the time, and then there was an investigation that was never done, and that was just on a simple DUI. But again, it was a matter of, I think, significant importance to the community, and while I could have just fired off a piece of paper that said, hey, I'm not filing charges here, I don't see it, I just don't think that's right. Not in this day and age with these kinds of charges for this specific area. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, but that was it. That's the last time I've done it. And that was right before COVID. Good question. Tom, do we know anything about how the folks that were shot are doing? Surgery. Had to have surgery. And remember, the other injury to the other individual was a grazing of their skull. So, what by a bullet? Yes, ma'am? Okay, an agent. Thank you. I don't know the answer to that. Tom, do you know? Okay. Did you hear that? Yeah. Anything else? Any questions at all? Look, I'll stay here until you're all burned out on hearing me jibber jabber. Nothing else. Come on. Nothing else?